one of my favorite humans on the planet. We finally didn't lose to Pardon the Interruption as best studio show daily.
Yeah.
But then the calls came within my other house, the NFL Network. So they came from within that house. But PTI with this gentleman and Tony Kornheiser is one of the best shows ESPN has ever put on the air. And I love his work on the pregame, postgame, and halftime with Greeny and Jalen Rose and Stephen A. The great Michael Wilbon here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line. How you doing, Michael?
You're too kind, Rich. I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm here in Boston, recuperating from a late night after Game 3 and getting ready for Game 4 tomorrow, and listening to all the controversy between the LIV golf people and the PGA, and even when you have what you think is going to be a slow day in June, all of a sudden it's not so slow. So I'm here in Boston, walking around a beautiful city and getting ready for that stuff.
Okay, so let's jump into it. Your impression of the NBA Finals through 3 games is what, Michael Wilbon?
It's about like I thought, back and forth, the way I hope it should be. I mean, you sort of hope the games were closer. Trying to figure out why, the back and forth deals with the result. It doesn't deal with the action. And some of these big leads are growing, and you wonder why that is the case. And people are hard-pressed to really explain why, even Hall of Famers who are on the scene watching these games in person and covering it. But the back-and-forth nature of the result is what I expected. And I kind of expect that tomorrow. I expect the Warriors to come back and figure out a way to win, unless Steph Curry is so hobbled that he can't help them at all. But even then, I expect the Warriors to win tomorrow, and I expect this thing to go back to San Francisco for Game 5, tied at 2.
And just based on the Warriors habitually, 24 straight series have won a game on the road. They do have the hearts of a champion, so on and so forth, because the Celtics seem to have their number, to me, Michael, with the exception of the second half of Game 2. You could say that they're clearly a better comprised, younger team right now.
Yeah,
you can make that case.
The Celtics got blitzed in the third quarter of Game 1 and last night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, last night the Warriors still came out and beat them pretty decisively in the third quarters, and the Warriors are the best third quarter team in the league. So we do have a longer lens from which to view that. Younger, yes. Physically stronger, I certainly would think so. But I don't know that carries the day. The Celtics also, they'll give you some stuff. They tried their best to give away Game 7 in Miami. Last night, they were up 20 points, and Golden State comes back and takes a 1-point lead in that game. So, I'm not at the point where I've seen a team sort of reveal itself as the better team. Not yet, not for me.
Michael Wilbon here on the Rich Eisen Show. Michael, we had Rex Chapman on in the first hour, and I asked him his thoughts on Klay Thompson's comments about the Boston crowd using foul language and things of that nature. Things that you absolutely would not hear from Klay. And he read into it to say that Thompson isn't clearly yet the same player that he used to be. And most likely will be again coming up this fall, and deep down knows he might not have the old Klay Thompson necessary to shut this crowd up, and that may be part of the frustration level of him giving a comment like that. I wonder what you think, Michael.
Rex is one of my favorite people to talk to, and has been since he was just out of Kentucky a million years ago. But those are separate things to me, or they can be. They are. I mean, first of all, I agree with Rex's assessment that Klay made that. Klay said about 6 weeks ago, it was right at the beginning of the playoffs, maybe at the end of the regular season, it might have been 8 or 9 weeks ago, that he was just getting his legs back, that he couldn't guard, he couldn't defend like he was accustomed to. And to me, that's to be expected. And there were a lot of people who said coming back in that Klay would need to get into that second season before he felt like himself again if he could get there. And that's one thing. I mean, what the crowd is saying, I'm not familiar with. Look, I have like most people of my age who are of color, I have a complex relationship with Boston, the Boston Garden, and the Boston Celtics fans. Very complex. Only place I've ever been called the N-word, and it wasn't the N-word that was used to my face in public, was in the Boston Garden, the old Boston Garden. So I know some of the nasty things they Rich, and that has nothing to do with performance. Those things are separate, and they are considerable. So there's Klay Thompson's ability to perform and whether he can get back to where he was, and then there is what is being said by some fans. I think I'm sure it's a decreasing number of fans compared to the 1980s or 70s or 60s. I'm sure it's a decreasing number. And Boston is an evolving city. But let's not pretend that everything said is just about sport, or everything said is above the fray, because it hasn't been historically. Again, this is an evolving city. The relationship is complex. I enjoy walking around. I enjoy Boston in a way that I did not 35 years ago if I was here for a series. And so those are, when people talk about what's being said, unless they are willing to repeat it to you verbatim, we don't. I don't know what Klay was talking about in this case. I can find out, because if I talk to Klay, he's going to tell me exactly what was said. And I have not heard that sort of thing in recent years. I have not. Doesn't mean it's not being said. And again, I think it's decreasing. I think it has. I know there are fans who are self-policing. There are fans who have come up to me. I'm sitting outside of Starbucks right now in Boston in a hotel that I'm staying in. I had a fan come up to me and he said, "Hey, I've heard you talk about this in the past." And he said, "I'm one of those people that will shout folks down when I hear this." And I said, "Have you heard it?" And he said, "Yes, I've heard it. This is this white guy in his late 30s. And it's an interesting thing. And by the way, Boston is the only place where that happens, or has happened. It is a place where it has sort of famously happened. But I'm not about to equate those two or connect those two. What was said to Klay Thompson is what was said to Klay Thompson, whatever that was. And Klay's ability or inability to get his game back is a completely separate topic to me.
Michael Wilbon here on the Rich Eisen Show. Draymond Green, we always talk about how the stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, the little things that leads to Warriors wins. Now those little things that don't show up on the stat sheets are all we're talking about because the Warriors are losing. I wonder what your thoughts on Draymond Green's first 3 games of this series and his prospects
are. He had no game last night, Rich, as you know. He had no game. Mm-hmm. He had one basket on basically a backdoor, open dunk, wide open, not contested. He had no game. He had more. I think he had the same number of rebounds and points that he had fouls. He had no game. So they're not going to win this series with Draymond Green doing that. And I expect him to face up to that today. He did it last night. He criticized his own play, and it was worthy of criticism. I expect him to. This is what off days are for. I've constantly started to remind people that a sport with a series is not pro football. It's not. It's a series. It digs and it zags and it goes back and forth. We are so used to, as a culture, judging first and foremost the most popular form of sport entertainment we have in this country, which is pro football. We now think we can judge everything based on that model, and that would be dumb. A series goes back and forth, and people don't have. It's not determined by one great performance. It is not even determined by 2 or 3 great, because people have bad performances, even the greatest players. I was reminded that by the GOAT not too long ago, by Michael Jordan, who said to me, I had series with bad games. And I'm like, no, you didn't. And he said, yes, I did. And you were there for them. Go look them up. And so did Magic, and so did Larry, and so did LeBron. And so, so people have bad series in the games when they even maybe win the MVP. So Draymond was terrible last night. He had no game. Do I expect him to be terrible tomorrow? No, I would bet against it that Draymond will be good, not tomorrow, but Friday. Mm-hmm. No, that is tomorrow.
It is.
Even though what day it is, Rich.
Well, you should be out in front of a Dunkin's, to be honest with you, instead of a Starbucks in Boston, Michael. Not to be very critical of you. Not to be critical of you, but
that was nice and smooth. I like that. But Rich, I expect Draymond Green to be closer to, I'm not going to say vintage, but I expect Draymond Green to have an impactful game tomorrow. And I expect for him to be back in the column of, impactful players and not where he was last night, which was a waste of time. Now, whether he has distracted himself with some of this nonsense, I don't know. That's not like Draymond. Draymond he understands who he is. And he has to be a distraction to the other team. And he can be an annoyance in his own locker room when he's agitating guys to be better. I expect that Draymond Green tomorrow, not whatever we saw last night.
Few minutes left with Michael Wilbon, ESPN's Pardon the Interruption co-host with our friend Mr. Tony, and also along with Stephen A. Greeny and Jalen Rosen, a little bit of magic on the NBA on ABC Finals coverage. So let's get into the LIV, if you will, versus the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan sent out a note to all PGA Tour players today, basically saying anybody who plays on this tour is suspended from the PGA Tour. And I'll be honest, Michael, it kind of feels like some of these college coaches who are complaining about the NIL world that is changing the landscape and will not be stopped. And I kind of get that feeling from this. I wonder what you do.
It's a great analogy. Rich, if they have so much money, the Saudis if they're throwing so much money at this, so there's at least one player who was in the NCAA championships last week who's now at LIV. And so let's just do the math. I mean, Jay Moore, it seems so tone deaf. It is. It's college football coach tone deaf. It is. So if you get $120,000 for finishing in last place and missing the cut, and you do that for 6 or 7 weeks, and you're 8 weeks, all 8 weeks you finish last every tournament, that's $1 million. You know what you make to finish in last and missing the cut every single week in 8 weeks on the PGA Tour? You get nothing. So why would a 22-year-old be cowered by the PGA and Jay Monahan? This is insane. This is insane. First of all, I don't see it standing a legal test at all. But even if it did, if one entity is offering you, and by the way, you're not going to finish last every week. Let's say you finish 23rd 2 weeks, and you're up in the $700,000-$800,000 range, and you mix that in. You just made $2 million straight out of college, and the PGA you just made expensive, $80,000 for those weeks you finish whatever you did. Are you kidding me? This is money we're talking about, and people can call it blood money. That's not going to. I don't think that resonates with people of a certain age, and I don't think it resonates with most golfers anyway. We're talking about a profession, a tour where everybody, no matter how much they make, including Tiger and Phil, beats to Florida, usually as soon as they can to avoid all form of taxation. So no matter if they make $100 million a year. So you're going to tell me that, let's just say, I mean, Bryson DeChambeau, he's not an incidental character, Rich. I mean, he was making a lot of money as is on the PGA Tour, but he's going to make much more from the Saudis. So you mean to tell me all these guys are just going to straight up? I hear that a certain player has texted a picture of his bank account statement to other players who are not going to come. And they see that amount, which is more than $100 million, Rich. That's just guaranteed. And those guys are going to turn that down on that tour? There's no chance. So the interesting thing is, with the tone deafness of what seems to be the you and me, and I'm with you, tone deafness, why would the other players stay away? What's going to keep them away? We're going to suspend you? Okay, fine. I'll go. I'll leave. What's going to keep them away from that tour?
I don't know what the answer is, though, right? I mean, what do you turn to your television partners or your partners in business, the sponsors, and say you got to come up with more scratch, otherwise we're dead?
But it's streaming, so they're going to match it? Are they going to come within 50%? Let's review. Dustin Johnson, if the rumors, the reporting is accurate, we're talking $200 million. Who's going to come up with that?
Nobody.
On the pitch? This is
nobody.
This is money, right? That's right. And so, I mean, Workday. I mean, I know some of the sponsors. I know some of the heads of those companies. Going to come up with that? Is the money unlimited? And so, when you said I don't have the answer, I don't either. But I don't see people just saying no to this kind of money. Billions, not a couple of billion, not a few billion, but tens of billions of dollars, if that reporting is accurate. So I just, and people, if they are streaming to this tour, first of all, it seems like maybe the PGA overplayed its hand. I mean, suppose the PGA, I know they didn't want to sit down with Greg Norman. They didn't want to, okay, but suppose they could have put this on, they could have done a partnership, and they could put this on in the fall. Because right now the PGA has decided not to contest against the NFL wisely. They've already kowtowed, right? They've already said we can't handle the NFL's money. So they're going to handle the Saudi's money. They don't come up. They ended their tour early, their season, so they don't have to deal with the NFL competitively in September, October, November. So why not just let the Saudi tour do that? Why not just figure out a way to partner? Okay, they didn't want to partner. Maybe they consider the human rights element of this too much and it overwhelms them. All right, but don't be holier than thou about this. You can't then come and suspend. I don't believe that is going to withstand any legal challenge. None. And then you've got the practical matter of, even if it did, what's going to keep those guys from going and saying, yes, I'll take your money.
Michael, I appreciate the time, man. I always do. What's your choice in Starbucks? What have you been holding and sipping on throughout this conversation? What do we got?
Hot chocolate. I have so that I don't get myself in trouble while I'm in Boston, where Dunkin' is a preferred choice of every street corner in the city.
Yes.
I used to be a Dunkin' guy. I can't consume that kind of sugar anymore. So I'm not I ask people, what do you get when my friends, what do you get?
Yeah.
They start telling you about lattes with a spoonful of this and a pinch of that. I have no idea what any of that means, Rich. I'm old and old-fashioned. And my father drank too much coffee, and it smelled up the house in the morning, which I thought I liked when I was a kid.
No.
And so now I get hot chocolate and hope it doesn't run my blood sugar.
Or maybe you're going to Starbucks for the money, right? You're leaving Dunkin' behind. There's no way to compete, right?
Rich,
there's no way to compete.
Some sponsorship deal, wouldn't it?
That's it. You can't turn it down. Can't turn it down.
Oh my God, you're the best, man.
Right back at you. Right back at you. Great to chat with you. Say hi to Tony and Stephen A. and everyone else. Greeny, thanks for Jalen.
Pass that along tomorrow.
Please do. Please do. Take care of yourself, Michael. Thanks for the time. You go. That's Michael Wilbon, everybody, right here on the show. Love that guy.